thank you for watching. This is the Student Theologian, and sorry if this video, this upload of this supposed to be bi-weekly podcast episode is kind of late. I had some technical difficulties last time. I had this loud clicking noise that I didn't realize was there until after I uploaded after I got done recording it, so I'm going to have to say all the things I did already. I'm going to do this again. Hopefully this time there's no clicking noise, and you guys can watch this probably tomorrow, which is going to be a Saturday for you all. But if you like this type of content, if you like what I'm doing here, please consider liking and subscribing. I've noticed that a lot of people who've watched my videos are not subscribed, so don't let that be you. So, again, I post my bi-weekly podcast, which is called My Thoughts On, and I give my thoughts on different geopolitical situations, politics in America, more specifically. I give theology, as well as my life updates with what I'm going through with seminary and life and work, and updating all on my quest to be a pastor, on my quest to get married, hopefully. So, alright, so the first part of my segment is pretty short usually because there's not been any major life updates other than the fact that I am in seminary, which is a pretty big life update, but you guys have had that life update for a while now. So, I'm in seminary. I'm going into my second year. In fact, next Tuesday is when my classes start. So this is going to be when I start learning about a language, an ancient language. I was explaining this the other day in a conversation that I'm having with someone that I met online. But I told her that languages. She asked me if the modern day Greeks could understand ancient Greek, the language that I'm going to be learning, and my answer was no. And it's interesting when you study the languages, you see how they've evolved and adapted over the years. So me, I speak English, and if you show me a video of someone speaking English 500 years ago, I would have absolutely no idea what they're saying, because that's how much our languages evolve over time. Any language that you have heard of in the ancient world are mostly dead now, because they've evolved and changed so drastically. English is a huge example of that. Old English sounds nothing like modern day English that we speak. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting for sure. But to understand the Bible at its core, at its foundation, is to understand the ancient Greek and Hebrew, because that's what the ancient writers wrote in. The Old Testament writers mostly wrote in ancient Hebrew, so that's why you need to learn Hebrew, ancient Hebrew. The New Testament writers mostly wrote in ancient Greek, which is why we learn Greek. And I'm excited. I'm excited more to actually know ancient Greek than I am putting in the work to learn it. But I think that's the same way with anything. I wish that I could transport myself in the future to where I already learn all this. But where's the fun in that? Then I have to go through the journey in order to reap the benefits of the finish line. I know we're not at the finish line. We're at a starting point. And that's the thing in seminary. You get done with one semester, and you just build up with your knowledge with more than likely increasingly difficult courses. So, and it's going to be like this for probably close to 3 more years. Hopefully I'm hoping to finish a little bit early since I'm taking a summer class, but yeah, it'll be almost 3 years until I'm done with that. If you haven't noticed, I'm not wearing glasses, mostly because of the glare that I've seen when I tried to upload it last time. But I'm hoping to get contact lenses, because I'm not a fan of the way I look with glasses, and I'm not a fan of keeping up with them all the time. So we'll see about that, hopefully. As for any other life updates for me, not much. I'm still having some good conversations, haven't asked out my church crush yet. And how many crushes I've made at my age is such a immature way to look at it. In a way, you should say it's someone that you see potential with. So, but we'll see what happens there. Now, okay. Okay, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about, and a couple of things I'm going to add in here in the last minute because they've only been relevant very recently, and I didn't get to talk about them a whole lot. And again, it's not going to sound like the recording that I did last time that I'm not uploading to the YouTube channel because it was so poorly done and edited. But hopefully I just get the main ideas and I touch on all the things. I do have notes that I read. They're bullet points. I don't write a script, as you can tell. And that's why you hear me say and stutter over my words sometimes, because I'm not writing a script. I'm not reading from a script. I'm not Joe Biden, who is supposed to be talking about foreign policy and accidentally talks about ice cream. So, yeah, I want to talk about James Fishback. James Fishback is one of, I think, 3 Republicans that are running to succeed Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis in Florida as governor. I think there's a couple of Democrats. I have not been paying attention to the Democratic side of that governor's race. I think it's going to go to a Republican. But I'm hoping it's James Fishback because James Fishback is not owned by Israel or AIPAC. If you see the total number of AIPAC donations, Fishback has 0. The other Republican candidates have hundreds of thousands of dollars from AIPAC. I think James Fishback is a grassroots guy, more consistently pro-MAGA, pro-America first than Donald Trump himself. I think James Fishback is one of many candidates that are going to be running in the near future that do have a more America first mindset or view than Donald Trump himself. James Fishback is a guy who's gotten the support of Nick Fuentes, who's been endorsed by Tucker Carlson. And I've said this in my last upload, actually, when I talked about Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens, that this is the new right that is arising. And if James Fishback, who is not the favorite to win this race at all, but he is gaining momentum, but if that momentum carries him over and he's able to win this governor's race, I think that's huge for the American First movement. He would be the first candidate, I think, that would be one of these new age America First candidates to win a seat. So, and there's talk that Donald Trump may actually change his endorsement to James Fishback, which would help him even further. Right now, Donald Trump has endorsed one of the other Republicans. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but I like James Fishback, who he has gotten a lot of flack. The bad things saying is said about him. He's gotten a lot of criticism lately for his support of a 50% tax on OnlyFans models, which I think is great. If you can't ban porn or OnlyFans, the best thing you could do is to put a sin tax on it to dissuade people, presumably women, from entering that field. And I think it's a blatant hypocrisy for all these OnlyFans women out there to say all these things about men objectifying them, and then they sell their bodies online for $6 a month, and it's pathetic. And I hope James Fishback wins. I hope he passes this sin tax, and I hope that it keeps young impressionable women away from doing porn, because it's not just damaging to men, it's damaging to women who do it. It's sin and something that we have to fight against. And in a morally good society, we would not tolerate this. So, and James Fishback is the only one doing this. He's the only one shooting this far into this field. He's the only one really taking shots at the porn industry like this. So I'm hoping that he can win. So the other thing that I want to talk about is Iran in trouble. What's going on in Iran? Well, nothing short of the downfall of Islam itself. And we've seen over the decades how the Christian church in Iran has been growing and growing. And Iran is ironically becoming a Christian nation, while many European countries, due to unchecked immigration, are becoming Islamic. And that's an irony. But I think this is good for Iran. I think that the Shah Pavlova should come back and rule as a constitutional monarchy that protects religious freedom in that country. Because that's what that's what Muslims do not want. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to allow anyone else to worship anywhere else or anything else except for their religion, their view. And that's what is going on in Iran right now, is a revolution against the Islamic theocracy. This theocracy is, of course, dictatorship, is a dictatorial ruling party that forces women into this Islamic society, forces them to wear burqas, bans them from driving. And it's not just the women's rights that they're crushing. It's the fact that they persecute so many Christians and non-Muslims. And as much as a Christian nationalist I am, even under a Christian nationalist government, we would not do forced conversions. We would allow people to worship freely, as long as they don't belong to a dangerous, violent cult that is Islam. But we would not do forced conversions. We would not censor someone's speech. And we would not, generally speaking, restrict people's right to worship. And that's what Iran is doing. They're finding out. And Iran is acting very violently throughout this revolution, and it's descending into a civil war. So I predict that the Iranian government will fall, that we're going to have another Iranian revolution. And I hope that the Christians can emerge from Iran, that we can start planting some big churches there, that we can start doing evangelism, street preaching, all the things we couldn't do because the church was so persecuted. Now we can do. And so there's rumors that thousands of mosques are being burned down, and things are starting to pop off in Iran. So just look for Iran to go through a government change, and I think if that happens, we have a very strong chance of getting Persia back. Now we just need Italy to become the Roman Empire again. That would be great. But we would also not want the Ottoman Empire to come back either. But then we'd have the Greek Empire too. How would they react? So, no, I think that Persia was the name of Iran before the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Revolution that put the Islamists in power. So I think Persia would be the name of it after as the Islamic theocracy falls, hopefully soon. On the next topic, not much. So other than Trump threatening to take or conquer Greenland, there's not much to talk about in the world of geopolitics. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but I can't fit all the geopolitical issues that I want to talk about on one podcast, because I'd be talking about it all day. I can give you some of my predictions, but that would probably take all day as well. The next subject I want to talk about is, should Christians support ICE? I think that we'll probably talk about this on some other podcast as well, but the Democrats use the Bible in a way to try to own the Christian right. Like they'll say that stuff like they use the kind and gentle nature of Christ to suggest that we shouldn't care about sin, that we shouldn't preach repentance. And then, of course, Jesus never says that we should not repent of our sins. He doesn't support any lifestyle that we want to live in. He tells us to pick up our cross and follow him. So, and another example of how the left tries to use the person of Jesus against us is they say that Jesus, during his time, his birth, his family immigrated, but they immigrated within the borders of the Roman Empire at the time. They only did so because their lives were being threatened. That is not at all prescriptive for us to have completely open borders across different countries like America, Mexico, and Canada. So traversing from one Roman province to another would be like someone going from Texas to Arkansas to Kentucky. It's not the same thing as moving to another country altogether without so much as a visa. So I think that, and it's ironic that a lot of these same left-wing liberal quote-unquote Christians try to use the Bible to support their anti-ICE, anti-borders opinions. They used Romans 13, the aspect that the command that we're to submit to government authorities. They used that during COVID, saying that we should obey lockdown laws and mask mandates and stuff. And then when we try to use that, but now they're not using that argument anymore, now that Trump's in power. And I find that quite ironic. And this is what the liberals do. They try to use Christianity. They try to take Bible verses out of context, Bible passages out of context in order to fit their narrative. Not because they actually care about following the Bible, they're just trying to shame the Christian right. They're trying to shame evangelicals into supporting their dumb worldviews. This is a method that they have used that's being less and less effective because they're overusing it over the years. It's almost as less effective as calling someone a Nazi for disagreeing with you on something. It's obviously not a recipe for success. I think we should totally support ICE. We should support our nation's borders. We should do so because they're keeping our communities safe. And because God is the one that establishes nations and borders. He did it at the Tower of Babel when he spread the nations out. He did it when in securing Israel's borders. And he maintains nations and borders now as he reigns sovereignly in heaven today. I think that we have a right to enforce our border and keep our community safe from drugs and fentanyl and stuff. So I totally support ICE and what they're doing. I support these mass deportations. I wish they would pick back up. And I wish we'd deport so many people that I wouldn't have to press one to listen in English ever again. I think we should have a nation that speaks one language, where everyone can speak one language, English. I think we should be a nation that has one flag that we're ultimately submitting to, the American flag. I think we need to have a government that is ultimately submissive to its one people, the American people. That's my opinion on it. I don't think there's anything you could take from the Bible that tells us that open borders is fine, that ICE is doing a bad job, or don't let these liberals try to fearmonger you into thinking that we're in some sort of police state just because we enforce the borders. Obama also did mass deportations, and that at probably a higher rate than Donald Trump is doing. And no one said that Obama was this police state supporting fascist who is just mindlessly deporting everyone who's brown. And that's the accusations they throw at Trump. When the Democrat was in office, he he deported people too, and no one said anything about that. I know I'm getting to a whataboutism, but still, the point remains: borders are borders, and if you want to come to America, you need to do it the right and correct and legal way, like so many people have. And if you come here illegally, I think you should have to face the legal consequences for that, just like I would face legal consequences for trespassing in someone's yard. When you immigrate to a country, you're here as a guest. You have to assimilate to the culture around you, to the culture that already exists. You have to learn that people's language, their customs, and you have to do it, and you have to be in the mindset that you're a guest. Don't come here demanding that America assimilates into your culture. Don't come here demanding that we learn your language. Because this is America, and we don't do that. All the immigrants that have came here for the past 200 years legally have learned our language and our customs and have fit in nicely. People, immigrants from Ireland and Italy, they've done it the right way. So, okay. So next topic is more of a I guess you could say it's a theology, but it's more of a controversy between some pastors that have been arguing on X, some pastors and theologians. And I don't know if all these people involved in these arguments are pastors, but they're all claim to be leaders of the evangelicals, and I think this speaks to a bigger divide that's happening, within the evangelical right, between Zionist and anti-Zionist, between the new right and the old right, between the Zoomers and the Boomers. You see this divide across all these different lines, across all these different parties, religions, and it's really creating a lot of tension within within each and every movement, and it's fascinating. However, I'm going to first speak on the Joel Webbing controversy, and then I'm going to go over some wrong things. I'm going to try to debunk some of the things that the Zionist evangelicals have said, and explain it why I think they're wrong. So Joel Webbing, he's had this very long essay, and I don't want to mischaracterize or misquote him when it comes to this, but the issue of interracial. There's been talk of interracial marriage and this being on the debate stage due to some of the comments made by anonymous accounts. And they're always the anonymous accounts that are making these really, really extreme comments that Christian pastors then latch onto and talk about as if this is some sort of widespread belief. And this is probably why a lot of these pastors should spend less time on X and social media, and then should spend more time actually sitting down and discussing these ideas in person. Because I think in social media it can be easy to mischaracterize or misunderstand what someone is saying. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding of the things that Joel Webbing has said recently. So Joel Webbing said that interracial marriage is not a sin, which I would agree with him. That's a pretty good statement. He said that. However, according to, I don't want to mischaracterize him, so I'm going to try to summarize his beliefs, because he has this long essay where he talks about it, but he doesn't believe that interracial marriage is natural, or doesn't believe it's ideal. That's the way he put it, ideal. So that was his opinion on it, and Alright, so I had to take a moment to pull up what he said. He made like four different tweets about this because he couldn't fit it all in one. He said it is an interracial marriage is an exception God may bless, not the pattern He ordinarily establishes. Insert that it is not God's normative design is to affirm creation, history, and prudence without denying grace, dignity, or redemption. And He does not want to make interracial marriage a crime or anything like that. And I think that Samuel saying has kind of mixed characterized what Joel Webben is saying and tried to paint him in this picture that he's a racist. And that's just not who Joel Webben is, or the argument that he's making. I think he's making the argument that all races are different, are unique. We each have our own customs, and we each have our own athletic capabilities, our own mental capacities, our strengths and weaknesses. And normally, ideally, it is good for us to stay within the bounds of our own ethnicity when it comes to marriage. But it's not a sin if you don't. I think that's the argument that he's making. And I think that for most of us, we wouldn't say this publicly because we're afraid of being called a racist, which is one of the worst insults that someone can come at you nowadays, it seems. But I think that it's okay to have a preference for your own race when it comes to dating. I've dated women that had a preference for only their own race, and they certainly weren't racist. They had many black friends and stuff. I don't think I would date outside of my race. We're supposed to had to save Europe and fight the Kalergi plan. And when there are people on the verge of genocide, then you have to save your own people first and have white kids, which is a good thing. But it's not a sin if you don't. Which again, that's the area of grace that Joel Webben operates in. And Samuel I think I'm saying his last name right, but he's basically assumes that Joel Webben is racist who offers no grace. And again, he mischaracterizes everything that Joel Webben is saying. So I think that Saint needs to apologize. I think they both need to sit down and have a conversation about this, make it a debate, so that they both understand what they're actually saying. So that leads me into my next thing. It's debunking some of the things that Owen Stretchen, I can't think of it, again, I must be mispronouncing this guy's last name, but he's another one of these Zionists, like Doug Wilson and James White, who think that there's Nazis in the basement ready to come out. He has this idea of these fascist boogeyman that's going to arise out of nowhere. And a lot of times when he makes these accusations, it sounds like he's a liberal who's afraid of everyone who's to the right of them. I don't think that's the way we should operate. I think we should be able to have the intellectual capacity to understand that someone who disagrees with us on something is not necessarily a racist, that there's more positions to take when it comes to Zionism and Israel. There's more positions to take than you're either pro-Israel or you're an evil racist Nazi. And Owen Stretchen is close to teaching a heresy. And I don't think he understands it. I think he's ignorant of it, which is good on his part, because I don't think he's purposely, intentionally spreading heresy. But he said recently, to summarize it, I don't have his Twitter account pulled up, and I'm not going to take the time to pull it up. But he said that denying the Holocaust is a sin. Now, I think it would be a sin if you believe it happened and then you say you don't, or you don't believe it happened and you say you did, because you'd be lying about something that you believe in. And lying about something is a sin. But I don't think that believing or not believing in a historical event is a sin. You're not saved by faith alone plus the correct interpretation of World War II. You're not saved by faith alone and plus whether or not you believe in this historical event. You're saved by faith alone. And all that other stuff is just political beliefs that you have. I think actual like racism and actual anti-Semitism is a sin. I think if you have a genuine bigoted hatred of others based on their ethnicity or nationality, I think that's a sin, and that would be fruit of someone who's truly not regenerative. I think he should have said that, but no, not believing in a historical event is not a sin. And that's the false dichotomy that these Zionists have gone through, because they're convinced that everyone to the right of them is a Nazi. They've essentially radicalized a large contingent of young men, and when they can't control them, they want to rein them in by shaming them. Owen Stretchin, the Gospel Coalition, these people have done so much placating to the feminist that they're losing ground on young men. This is why evangelicalism is losing young men to Catholicism, to Eastern Orthodoxy. We're losing them because we're trying to shame them. We're trying to make them into feminine. We're trying to make them into feminist. The Gospel Coalition will literally, and they've literally done this, they've brought on a feminist atheist person and insinuated that she's more of a Christian than someone who's not a Zionist, who's a Christian, who's a conservative man. And this is dangerous. You're losing the young men to this garbage. You're trying to placate people that don't like Christianity. And how can the reason why there's no Nazis in the basement, the reason why there's not this anti-Semitic boogeyman, because it doesn't exist. Look at who controls all the establishment of the evangelicals. If you see everyone who's on the church leadership boards, everyone who gets the most money, look at everyone who's in the mega churches all across America. What are they? They're Zionists. They're not anti-Zionist. The anti-Zionist are the people in the small churches who have a very niche following. People like Joel Webman. So I think that if we wanted to play this game, we would say the Zionists are the biggest threat. But again, I think this issue we can disagree with on as brothers in Christ. And all we ask is that the pro-Zionist would welcome different opinions on this, that they would be able to respectfully disagree with people who are not Zionist. And Doug Wilson, God bless him. Theology is mostly accurate. But how are you going to have a Christian nationalist movement that's placating to Judaism? That's what it is. It's garbage. You don't have a Christian nationalist country if you're placating to the Israeli cause. But I'm sure Doug Wilson got his, and Owen Stretchin have all got their $7,000 checks, which is not even a joke anymore. It's actually a thing. Israel is paying preachers, major preachers who have influence. Israel is flying them out, paying them to say nice things about them, because Israel is realizing that they're losing young men support in the church. So, but I think that also symbolizes the fact that they're losing this battle, that the Zionists are losing this ideological warfare, so they're reverting back to censorship, to silencing their opponents. And I think that, like that Star Wars quote that I'm thinking of, that Princess Leia said, that the tighter you squeeze, the more you lose control, and the more absurdly, unnecessarily divisive you are towards the anti-Zionist in the evangelical movement, the more people are going to follow that side. The only true path, if you are a Zionist, if you do support the Israeli cause, the only thing you can do to help your cause is to welcome debate, is to debate with people, have discussion with people, and welcome disagreement. I mean, I know it may be terrible to think that someone in the world disagrees with you on something, but believe me, it's not the end of the world, and people are going to disagree with you on stuff. And believe it or not, your brothers in Christ are allowed to disagree with you on stuff too. So, and no one doing that does not make you a sinner, and it does not make you a Nazi. You need to chill out. Stand by the most true Reformed doctrine there is, that salvation is by faith alone. And if you want to make an argument, and have discussion, but at the end of the day, be willing to disagree with people who don't agree with you on these things. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't think I have anything else to talk about today. So, tell me what you think. Did I totally nail this podcast, or do you have disagreement? If you do, then it's a sin. I'm just kidding. But if you do disagree, please tell me below, and I will try to not throw you under the bus like so many of these ultra-Zionists have done to everyone else who disagrees with them. So, until next time, this has been the Student Theologian. Peace out.